What happens in Columbus? Indiana plays Ohio State. We'll be there. Gus, Ginny, and I. Can't wait. Can't wait. Top 5 matchup. Another one this season, which has been filled with them. More top 5 matchups than we've had in a long time. And now the conversation is about like, well, what do the Hoosiers need to do in order to retain their spot within the playoff? And let me just start with this. Like, I do not think Indiana is going to get blown out. I think that they're much better than people realize. Everybody is focused on their strength of schedule. And yet, listen, it's not great. I'm not here to defend their schedule. But what I am going to defend are two things. One is that if you looked at that schedule in August, it looked vastly different. Or even if you go back to minutes after the national championship game, the day Curt Cignetti is hired, any of these moments back in the offseason, you look at their schedule and it did not look easy. They had Ohio State, Michigan, and Washington on their schedule. That was 3 of the top 7 teams in the country from the end of last year, right before the bowl games. Right? Like, and then nobody thought that Nick Saban was going to leave, which was going to prompt Kalen DeBoer to leave Washington and go down to Alabama, and Jim Harbaugh gets the Chargers job, and then all of a sudden the transfer portal is crazy, and all the teams change. But when we were sitting here back then, no one was complaining about Indiana's schedule. They're complaining about it now. And that's fair. I'm not here to tell you that that is not a fair argument. I get it. I get it. So what should a good team do against, let's call it a bad schedule, an easy schedule? They should be dominant. They should be dominant. They shouldn't be eking out wins by 3. They shouldn't be going to overtime with teams that they have no business being in overtime with. They should be dominant in those games. That's exactly what Indiana has done. So the team, the players, the coaches, they have this schedule put in front of them. They prepare themselves to go and be as dominant as they can against the schedule in front of them. They have no control over what's going to happen with those teams. They don't know that Michigan is going to have a terrible season by Michigan accounts. Okay, they don't realize that Washington's not going to be what we think, and that the 5-1 Nebraska team is not quite the 5-1 Nebraska team that we thought that they were going to be. So all they can do is go out there and be dominant against the team that's in front of them, and that's exactly what they've done. Nobody has a better margin of victory than Indiana this year. Their average margin of victory is up there with the best in the country. So they have been dominant. That's why, I just totally disagree with this sentiment that Indiana has to somehow prove something against Ohio State. Like, if Indiana loses on Saturday, then Curt Cignetti should stand there in front of the podium and be like, I wish the committee would come up here and look at that team that we just played and they were a top 5 team. So it's like, is the politicking going to start there? Maybe it should. Maybe it should. I don't care how the game goes. I think Indiana has done enough to this point where if they're an 11-1 team, they're probably going to be in the college football playoff and should be. This notion that they have to somehow prove something just because their schedule is not great, I think is laughable. I really do. I think it's laughable. That is not their problem. It is not their problem. And again, they've been dominant against that schedule. If they'd been beating this schedule by 3 every week, then it's a different conversation. But they haven't. They have been a dominant team over their schedule. And by the way, everyone's like, Indiana's drawing all the arrows. All the arrows. Everybody wants to just pound on Indiana. Guess why? Because it's Indiana. If this was a different brand, we wouldn't be doing this. And do you know how I know that? Because there are bad resumes all around them, with teams that have lost football games, which Indiana has not done. Texas's resume, bad. They don't have a top 25 win. They got beat at home handily by Georgia. Why are they 3rd in the country? I don't know. Penn State, their resume isn't great. They got a favorable schedule out of the Big Ten. They didn't have to play Michigan. You look up, they didn't have to play Oregon. So their only tough game was Ohio State. They lost it at home. Their only top 25 win, Illinois, 25th, 2 spots below Missouri. Sorry, I can't with the Missouri. It's ridiculous. Notre Dame's resume is not great. They have a loss at home to Northern Illinois. Like, why aren't we directing our ire at teams that have equally bad resumes with a loss? Miami, same thing. The exact same thing. They don't have many quality wins, and they lost to Georgia Tech. They should have gotten beat by Cal. They should have gotten beat by Virginia Tech, but they didn't. I'll hand them that. Got a little bump from the officials in some of those games. All we're talking about is Indiana, and yet there are bad resumes all around them. So guess what the point is there? The point is that nobody can have a loss now. That's the point. Everyone's talking about, like, is Indiana win with a loss? Well, guess what? I'm not sure. And Notre Dame can't lose to Army. Penn State can't lose to Minnesota this weekend. You know, like Texas can't lose to Texas A&M. That becomes a question. Where's Texas's quality win? Georgia can't lose another game. Alabama can't lose another game. Miami can't lose another game. Nobody can lose another game. The only team that can really like lose another game and be fine, Oregon. And not just because they're number one. They're number one and they have an off week this week, so they're 11-0, not just, 9-1 or 10-0. They've already qualified for the Big Ten championship game, which means they're in that game, probably shouldn't be downgraded for the 13th data point. The only team that can suffer a loss and probably two and still make the playoff is Oregon. I think Oregon has not only clinched a berth in the Big Ten championship game, but they've basically clinched a berth in the college football playoff. Now, they certainly want to go out and continue to win games. They want to win their rivalry game against Washington. They want to win the Big Ten championship game so that they can get a bye in the first round of the playoff. But this idea that Indiana specifically has something to prove, and even if they lose, it matters how they lose, I don't agree with that sentiment. I just don't. Nobody in this situation, nobody. Ohio State can't stand to lose. The only team that is up there and kind of putting themselves in a position where they're kind of above the fray is Oregon right now. So this is why, like, I don't love that everybody is focused on Indiana. They're focused on Indiana only because of the brand. Only because of the brand. There's bad resumes all around them.
Thank you for watching the Joel Klatt Show YouTube channel. And if you liked this clip, make sure to like it and subscribe to the channel, and you can stay up to date on all of my college football coverage.